An overriding royalty interest has more in common with the book and music and movie industry than it does with the energy industry. So let's use the example of Beatles music. You could buy royalty interest in the Beatles music. So when the Beatles produced their music, they had 100% of the rights to those songs. What does that mean? That means that if anybody played those songs on the radio or in concert or in one of their advertisements, they would pay the Beatles for that, okay? So, but the Beatles may have sold off some of those rights. So let's say that you could spend $100,000 and you could buy 1% royalty interest in Beatles music. What would that mean? It wouldn't mean that you have bought into MGM or whatever company or whatever record company that the Beatles had participated in. It wouldn't mean that you own a portion of the Beatles. It wouldn't mean that you own anything in the recording industry. What it would mean is, whenever Beatles music is played on the radio, you would receive money. You would receive money based on that. So what a royalty interest is it is income that doesn't come from the business that produced something. So it's not shares. It's not like a dividend, or you're not a shareholder or anything like that. You own the right to receive a check whenever Beatles music is played. Now you could subdivide this down. Let's say that you could get a 1% interest in all of Beatles music, but you could also take just one, let's say, Hey Jude. You could buy 100% of the rights to this music, to this one song. And if this one song is played on the radio, you would receive income because you own a percentage royalty interest in that song. Some of the things that does not mean, some of the things that means and it doesn't mean. It means that your income from Beatles royalties is separated from the company that produced it. So the record company, the Beatles themselves, like, you don't have any partnership with them. Your income is strictly limited to whatever gets played on the radio or whatever gets used in an advertisement or something like that. So one of the things that's true when you're dealing with royalties is you have it separated off from the company. That has positives and potentially negatives. The positives is that there are no extra costs and there are no liabilities. So if you own a royalty interest in the Beatles music, and let's say that somebody brought a case that said some Beatles lyrics were inflammatory and racist, and the company, the Beatles themselves, and or the record company was liable for that error. They had to pay lots of things. You, as an overriding royalty interest, that lawsuit has nothing to do with you, because you are separated from the income that you receive is just based on if it's played on the radio. Now, your income might go down because it's played on the radio less, but your liability, you don't have any liability and you don't have any extra costs for the running of that business. The other thing you don't have is you don't have control. You are going to get paid when Beatles music is played on the radio, but you can't. You don't get to lobby. You don't get to call the radio station and try to get them to play it more often. You have purchased Beatles music because you think it's going to be played, and if it is played, you receive funds. If it's not played, you don't receive funds. If it gets more popular, you make more money. If it gets less popular, you make less money, and you don't have control, but you also don't have any expenses or liabilities. That's true of royalty interest. Seeing the royalty interest in Marvel, in Marvel Comics, that when a movie came out that was based on Marvel Comics, if you had a percentage royalty interest, you would get funds from that. It is much more like that than it is like an energy industry, investment. So as we talk about this through kind of this series of explaining what ORRIs are and how you could get involved in them, that's the way I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it as an investment. I'm going to talk about it as a purchase. I know that it is an investment, you are investing, but it will help you to understand you're purchasing an asset that has value independent of the operations of the companies that are producing that value. So